Hello everybody, it's Jen, Scrapbena Creations. Welcome back to another 10 card video. This video is using the Pill Better by Doodlebug, and I went ahead and colored these while I was away one weekend at a crop. So I'm just showing you the colored images, and then I'm going to cut these out with my scan and cut. So I'll show you a little clip of the scan and cut in action. I absolutely love this thing and don't regret making the investment in it. So once I got these cut out, here's what they look like. I did leave a white border around all the images. So there are the soup cans, the Band-Aids, the little pill bottles, the pills themselves, and then the Kleenex boxes, and I colored those up in various colors, not really knowing what I was going to create with these cards. So here's a look at card number 1. Let's jump into the card making. So I've gone ahead and I've cut everything out that I need. I'm using the rounded rectangle dies here from Hero Arts. I've cut out a circle with a die as well for my focal panel. For this sentiment, I'm going to be using 3 of the Band-Aids and the sentiment in the stamp set that says "Best friends stick together," which I thought was really cute. So I'm going to go ahead and use 2 of the Band-Aids without the heart and then have the one with the heart kind of as the focal point. So I'm just trying to figure out how I want to position all 3 of the Band-Aids on this little circle here. Once I get those into place, I will go ahead and adhere those down with some glue. You can see here just kind of the process of making these cards. I do sort of have an idea of what I want to do, and here I globbed out a whole bunch of glue, so I'm going to try to fix that. But as I was saying, I have a general sense of what I want to do for the cards, but until I actually get creating them, I'm not exactly sure how they are going to be. So again, just fiddling with these Band-Aids. I want them to kind of be in a cluster. Again, with that red heart popping out for some color. I went ahead and cut a piece of red cardstock, and I'm going to use that as a band across the pattern paper. This pattern paper is from the Doodlebug So Much Pun collection and has the matching little Band-Aids, but I did want to break that up a little bit and add some more red into the cards, so I'm just going to go ahead and adhere that down with my tape runner. I'm going to get that into position and then I'll trim off the sides. Once I get that trimmed up, I will go ahead and adhere the circle onto my card panel here. I'm not going to use any foam adhesive for this card. This is a fairly flat card, which I think I tend to prefer because I mail a lot of my cards. I will use some dimension on some other cards, but for this one I just left it nice and simple. And really all 10 of these cards are very quick and simple cards that you can do to create some really fun get well cards when you need them. So I'm just going to get this on to my card base. All my cards today are standard A2 size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So there's card number 1 complete, and here's a look at card number 2. I thought it would be fun to try to create a Kleenex or tissue box. So I went ahead and I cut out a rectangle using my stitched rectangle die. The flower paper is again from the Doodlebug So Much Pun. I die cut out an oval with one of my stitched oval dies, and I'm just going to add some acetate to the back of that to represent the clear plastic that the tissues come out of in a Kleenex box. I used some score tape for that. It is nice and heavy duty, so it shouldn't come up at all. And I'm going to slit a little line in the middle of the acetate here with my craft knife. And I was not sure if this was going to work or not, but I was able to slip in a little bit of Kleenex. So I'm just going to cut this Kleenex down. And then I'm going to position it going through the acetate, and you need to be a little bit careful here because it is sharp where I cut it, so I'm trying to carefully pull that through without ripping it, trying to create a little bit of a space between those 2 sections of the acetate to kind of pull that through. And once I get that kind of where I want it to be, I am going to trim off some of that Kleenex. Now, in hindsight, if I were to do this again, I think I would back this with some white paper underneath the tissue. As it is now, I left it with just the acetate, and you can see the pattern paper through the background, which I think is fine, but I think it might have looked even better with some white cardstock behind it. So I'm just fluffing this Kleenex, playing with it until I get it in the right position. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim that, and I'm going to add some score tape to the back of that as well, just so that Kleenex will stay in place. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some foam tape to the Kleenex box so that it does pop off the page. And then I'll adhere that onto my background. The pink pattern paper is from the Doodlebug Hoppy Easter 6x6 paper pad, which I do have a 10 card video for as well. Just making sure I have my Kleenex in place. Now you may have noticed I'm a little off-centered with the Kleenex and the acetate opening, but I didn't want to play with it too much, so I'm going to try to fix that with the sentiment. And here I just wanted to get that pushed down a little bit more. I think you could probably fuss with this forever, but at some point you just need to let it be. So here's what I did to fix how that was looking off-center to me. I went ahead and I cut out a heart, and then I added the sentiment "Sneeze the Day," which comes in the stamp set. And I'm just going to place that off to the left-hand side and hope that that sort of balances out the Kleenex box so no one will notice that it's a bit off. I didn't want to go ahead and scrap this card given I'd kind of played around with it too much, so just made it work. And it's a handmade card, so it doesn't need to be perfect. I had a little bit of smudging with my ink, so I'm just taking my white gel pen here. I'm not sure if there was a cat hair on my stamp or what, but I'm just going to fix this up. Now you probably can't see that on camera, but it does make it look a lot neater. To finish off this card, I'm using some of the Doodlebug shaped sprinkles, and these are hearts, and I'm just going to scatter an odd number of these around the card. And I think that just ties in all the colors from the Kleenex box. So here's a close look at card number 2, and now we'll move on to card number 3. For card number 3, I pulled out my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp a pattern with the pill bottles in the top 1/3 of my card. I'm using my Versafine Clair Nocturne ink. This is a water safe ink, and so you can use it with your Zig Markers or whatever watercolor medium you choose. I went ahead and I masked out the pill bottle on a full-size sheet of Post-it notes. Well, it's a full adhesive sheet of Post-it note paper, and I'm just going to keep moving that along as I stamp. I'm just going to be careful with that mask that I don't get my fingers in the ink too much and spread it along the card. So I wanted to make sure there was an odd number of pills, so I will end up with 7 bottles. Just going to stamp that last one, and then I'll start on coloring the images. I thought it would be fun to do a rainbow pattern. I will leave the list of the colors for the Zig markers in the description box in case you want to know what colors those were. I started off with the light gray just to add some shadowing to the white spots. I wanted the labels and the tops of the bottles to be white. So I went ahead, laid down that color, and then used my paintbrush there to spread that out. I did kind of zip through that. I didn't think you want to sit there and see me do all 7 bottles the same. Added a little shading to the bottom so it doesn't look like they're floating, and now I'm going to work on the colors. So for the first color, I'm using a red tone. The second bottle I'm going to do in pink because I wanted the middle pill bottle to be yellow because that just happened to be what I had colored up one of the bottles. So I added in that pink there, and then I could move on to the orange. I'm going to skip that middle bottle completely because I have already colored that with my Copic markers, and I will adhere that to the card once I'm done all my watercoloring. For the last three, I'm going to use green, blue, and purple. So just adding color to the sides of the bottle, and I got a little bit of ink on my card there. I'm just using my white eraser to try to get that up off the card panel. Once I lay the color to the sides, I go ahead and I blend that out with my wet paintbrush. I am going to do 2 layers of the coloring, and when I go over it a second time, I'm not going with my paintbrush to the edges. I want to leave a much darker color to the sides. I'm just kind of gonna spread some of that color, leaving most of the ink or color that I laid down where it is to the sides of the pill bottles. So just going to quickly go through this second coat, and then I will let these images dry a little bit. You can see here the shading is much darker on that second go around, so I do like doing 2 layers of coloring when I'm using my Zig markers. Next, I'm going to move on to the sentiment, and I love the sentiment in the stamp set. It says "Pill Better Soon," which obviously is perfect for our little medicine or pill bottles. So again, I'm using my Versafine Clair ink. This gives a nice crisp image on the first stamp. So I'm going to get that down, and then I'm going to add our yellow pill bottle with the red heart in the center to that middle section that I didn't color up, and I did pop that up on some foam tape. So now I can go ahead and adhere the panel to my card base. I'm using my Art Glitter Glue liquid glue here for my cards. I do prefer to adhere my cards using liquid glue because it gives me a little bit of time to move that around to get it into place. And here I just needed to trim off a little on the side. Once I get that done, that card will be finished, and then we will move on to card number 4. So for card number 4, I thought I would try my hand at doing a bit more of a masculine card, or this could be gender neutral as well, but I thought that plaid paper from the So Much Pen paper pad would go perfect for a masculine card. So I went ahead and I cut that out with a stitched rectangle die. Now I'm using a stitched edge die from MFT, and I'm just going to die cut that paper almost in half, and it just gives a nice decorative edge. I'm going to adhere that down to the bottom of my panel. And then for a very clean and simple card design, I'm just going to add the Kleenex the Kleenex box and the chicken noodle soup to the top center of the card. And I'm going to leave it really clean and simple. So no sequins, no glitter, no fuss or mess, just a great masculine, clean and simple card. Love this sentiment. It says, "It's not fun being sick," which is absolutely hilarious. Goes perfect with the tissue box. And I'm going to add a little happy face here to the tissue box as well. There's a number of little faces that come in the stamp set. They can fit on the pill bottle, on the Kleenex box, but also on the tiny little pills themselves, which I will do in one of the cards later on. So no foam tape here. Again, this is a flat card. This one took really only 5 minutes to put together, not including the coloring of the images. But when you take time to color images, you don't really need to spend a lot of time on the card if you want them to stand out, in my opinion. So now that we have that card done, we can move on to card number 5. We are halfway through already, and this card is using the soup cans. So I want to do a very easy background. I'm using Distress Oxides here. The first color that I'm using is Squeezed Lemonade. Once I get a light coating of that down with my makeup brush, which I purchased off of Amazon, and as always, all the links to the products I use in my videos will be in the description box below. So once I got the squeezed lemonade on, I came in with the mustard seed, which is a bit darker. There's different shades of yellow in the image for the chicken noodle soup that I colored, so I wanted to have a two-tone effect for the background. I'm going to use my distress sprayer here, add a little bit of water. I did let that sit, but edited it out so you didn't have to wait for that to react. Went ahead and picked up some of that water droplets with my microfiber cloth and then splattered some of the ink on to my background as well. Just going to heat that up a little to make sure it's dry, and then I'm going to use 3 of the soup cans for this card design. I decided that I wanted to cut this panel down a little bit, so I went ahead and used a stitched rectangle die to do that. And now I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to my card base. So this just gives a nice crisp white edging to my card, which I think picks up well from the white in the soup cans. I don't know what's going on with my card bases, but they're not straight lately, so I just had to trim that up a little bit. I'm going to put 2 of those red cans of soup to the back and then have the chicken noodle soup to the front. But I want to go ahead and stamp my sentiment first, which says "Have a superb day," which is really great for an any occasion kind of card, just to thinking about you or wishing someone well. I think this would be a cute little card to put in your kid's lunch bag as well. So once I go ahead and get the red soup cans down, I'm going to add the chicken noodle soup on some foam tape to the center. I'm going to get that can straight, and then that's it for this card. I'm going to finish off with a little bit of glossy accents here on the little medallions on the soup cans. And then I'm going to use my white gel pen just to add a little bit of gel detailing to the sides of the red cans. And I think that just makes them look like they might be shiny. So moving on to card number 6. Card number 6, I'm coming back to use the pill bottles with the pills this time, and I'm using the adorable little pill pattern paper from the So Much Pun 6x6 paper pad. Went ahead again and stamped that, or die cut that out with my stitched rectangle die, and then I cut out a stitched oval with some white cardstock, and I'm going to bring back that squeezed lemonade Distress Oxide ink just to create a very soft background. I love the combination of blue and yellow, so I thought that that would be a good choice of color for the background for my images to pop off the card. I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down, and then I'm going to try to figure out where I want all of these little pills to fall. I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment first though before I adhere everything down. And again, I'm using the sentiment pill Better Soon. Once I get that down, I can figure out where I want the position of all my elements to be. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere these 2 pill bottles down with my liquid glue. I colored these up in orange colors. I don't know about in other places, but the majority of our medicine containers here in Canada are an orange color plastic. So I guess that's why I gravitated towards that color. But I did color up all the little pills in different colors, which plays on the pattern paper that I'm using for this card. So just kind of laying everything out here, you can start to see the layout for this card design. Once I get those in place, I'll go ahead and use some of my liquid glue to adhere these down. Takes a little second here to get everything into place, and you can see how things move around as you get them in their final position. But again, that's the great thing with liquid glue. It gives you that little bit of time to move things around so that they are in the exact place that you want them. For these 2 pills here, I was trying to keep them together so I wouldn't lose placement, but that didn't work so great, but not a big deal. I will get those down. To finish off this card, I'm going to add a couple of the smiley faces to some of the white parts of the longer shaped pills. First though, I'm going to go ahead and add this to my card base. The stamp set comes with some little happy faces and some sad faces, but I thought for this card I would keep it with the smiley faces so that it was happy in terms of, you know, wishing someone well if they're not feeling well. So now we're going to move on to card number 7. For card 7, I brought out my Distress Oxides again here. I'm using Squeezed Lemonade, Peacock Feathers, and Picked Raspberry. I'm going to go ahead and I want just another light shading of color for this background. So I'm going to start out with the yellow, and then I'm going to move into the pink. I'm going to try not to blend these together as much as possible because I really don't want any muddying of the colors. I want them to be true to the yellow, pink, and blue. Now, if you haven't had a chance to use these types of brushes, they are fantastic for light backgrounds and they clean up so easy. You can just wipe them off on a microfiber cloth and move on to your next color, so you don't need a whole bunch of them, which is great. So once I laid down all the color, I brought my Distress sprayer back out again and added some water to react that ink so there'd be some splotches. I thought that that would be kind of fitting for this card, seeing it's about sneezing and Kleenex, and it just looks like potentially someone could have sneezed on the background. Going ahead here and stamping out my sentiments, I just cut out 3 speech bubbles from an old speech bubble die I had in my stash. And I stamped out "Sneeze the Day," "Bless You," and "I'm Here for You." And I'm going to go ahead and put those on top of each of the Kleenex boxes. Now you'll see here, I didn't notice, but I actually want the color of the Kleenexes to be with the color of the background, and I had the blue and the yellow mixed up. I don't notice it until I actually go to adhere that down and then was able to get that in the right place before sticking it down with the foam tape. So I'm going to put the yellow and the blue ones to the back, and then the pink one a little bit more down on the card panel in the front, and then I'll go ahead and I'll move the speech bubbles as well so that the pink one's down a little bit and then the other 2 are up from the Kleenex boxes slightly, just to give a little bit of interest. Now to finish off this card, I'm going to add the smiley faces to the Kleenex boxes so it makes sense that there are speech bubbles on this card. So it's almost like these little tissue boxes are saying each of those sentiments. So that is it for that card. Another quick, clean, and simple card. I'm going to adhere this to my card base. I will add a couple of the shape sprinkles again underneath each of the sentiments in the speech bubbles. And here I go again, needing to trim up my card base. So there are matching colors in the shape sprinkles for the yellow, the pink, and the blue. So again, I'm just going to tie all these colors in. So the yellow with the yellow, the pink with the pink, and the blue with the blue. And then we can move on to card number 8. Are we at card number 8 already? This is going quickly. So for card number 8, I had a little piece of that Band-Aid paper left over from the first card that I created, and I didn't want to waste it, so I thought I would go ahead and line the card with that piece of pattern paper. To finish off that edge, I'm going to bring in a peel-off sticker from Love from Lizi. These are so great. They just finish off an edge so nicely, and so I thought I would go ahead and use a black peel off. They come in multiple colors, but I thought the black would tie in nicely with the black ink that I used for stamping, as well as the ink that I'm going to use for the sentiment. So I'm going to go ahead and just place that Band-Aid loosely onto my card. I haven't adhered it at all. I just want to go ahead and stamp the word ouch here. I'm going to stamp that 3 times, and I'm just using the Band-Aid here as a guide for where I want the placement of those words. Once I get those down, I'll add some foam tape, and here comes Lila for a little bit of a pet while I was making these cards. She ran by a couple times, but then she settled. So I did add some foam tape to the back of the Band-Aid, and then I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down to the card base. Really simple design, but I think it is really sweet. So once I get this down on to my card base, I'll go ahead and I'm going to add some glossy accents to the heart, and that will just allow the red on the heart to really pop. Now, glossy accents is cloudy when it goes on, but it dries, clears, and it's raised, so it gives a really nice glossy finish. Moving on to the second last card, I'm going to go ahead and show you here the pieces that I cut out. So I cut out a fishtail banner that's a Simon Says stamp die, and a couple pieces of paper here, one white cardstock, and then some polka dot pattern paper from the So Much Pun paper pad with some stitched rectangle dies. Again, bringing out that squeezed lemonade, and I'm going to go ahead and do a light background on this white cardstock as well. Actually, the white cardstock, the rectangle die that I used was the wonky stitch die. I was sort of thinking that this would make a great gender neutral or masculine card as well. Trying to decide if I wanted to have this card landscape or portrait, but I ended up going with landscape. Once I get my little focal panel on here with the white cardstock, I'll go ahead and I'll put these banner sentiment together. So this has a couple of folds in it, and it creates a really nice banner. I'm going to go ahead and add some adhesive to the sides of that banner, and then I'm going to add it to my card panel here, and realizing I put it up way too high, I wanted it to sit more towards the bottom of that panel. So I just used my adhesive eraser. This thing is such a savior if you get adhesive onto your cards. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to position these where I want them to go. I thought I was going to put all these elements onto the card, and looking at it now, I like it with the Band-Aid, but when I was putting it together, I just felt like it was too much for that small rectangle panel. So I will eventually go ahead and take that Band-Aid off of the card, and then I will put the larger elements in place and then put that pill on at the end. So I went ahead and in the end I decided to have the soup and the pill bottle to the back of the tissue box. I just want to make sure that the bottom of the soup can and the bottom of the pill bottle are lined up with each other, and I'm also trying to get equal spacing from the edge of that white cardstock. I'm going to go ahead and add some foam tape to the back of my Kleenex box here, so that will be raised a little bit off the card. Just needed to trim off a little piece of that you could see. And then I'll go ahead and adhere that down to my card. Then I'll still play with this Band-Aid. I really wanted it on the card, but I just didn't think it looked right. So I'll finish it off with the little white pill there in front of the pill bottle. I'm just going to ground the images a little, so I grabbed my C1 Copic marker here, and I will blend that out a little bit, but I'm just laying that down very lightly so the images look grounded onto the card. Again, just going to get this onto my card base, and then I'll go ahead and show you a close-up, And then we'll move on to the final card, card number 10. And I'm going back to the pill bottle because I just loved the pills and the little medication bottle. So I grabbed the polka dot paper from the So Much Pun collection, and I went ahead and cut that out with a stitched rectangle die. Then I just had a piece of this yellow paper from my stash. Went ahead and stamped out the sentiment "Pill Better Soon." I'm just going to trim that up, and I'm going to add my own fishtails to each side of this sentiment banner. Once I get that done, I'll go ahead and I'll add some foam tape to the back of my sentiment here, just to give it a little bit of interest on the card. Just going to clean up those little cut pieces and then add the foam tape. First, I'm going to cut the lid off of my pill bottle here. Once I get that done, I'll have to trim up the sides of the bottle itself. I'm going to add some foam adhesive to the top and the bottom portion of our little medicine bottle as well. And then without sticking down the pill bottles, I'll just play around with placement. First though, I am going to add the sentiment, and I got it a little bit crooked, so I had to carefully pull that up a little bit. I am just going to move that down slightly and make sure it is straight on my card panel here. So here's where I add the foam tape. And like I said, now I'm just going to kind of play with placement. This card didn't quite turn out the way I had envisioned it in my head. I sort of wanted it to look like the pill bottle was spilling, and I kind of first thought I would have it in the air like it was spilling out, but I didn't feel like that looked right. So then I thought I better try to position it over the sentiment, almost like it's laying on a counter or something. I do position it so that it is tilted up a little bit to give the illusion like the pills are coming out of the bottle. I did add some foam tape to all of the little pills as well. And I'm just really going to take a little bit of time here to fiddle around with these and figure out what looks best. This is another example of having an idea in my head before I get going, but not quite knowing how it's going to turn out. I don't love this card, but you can't win them all. So I thought I would keep it in here and show you or give you an idea of how you could use the pill bottle in a different way to make a card. So I've sort of decided on placement here now. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm finally going to commit. Just adding some of those white pills around the elements here just to kind of break up some of that color. I'm going to tuck that pink one behind the lid. I did manage to get my finger smucked into the sentiment, so I'm just using my white eraser. If you get it quick enough, that white eraser will take off the ink on your pattern paper or cardstock. I'm just going to get this last one in place here, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp a couple of the sad faces on the longer pills. I'm going to put my card onto the card base, and then once I got it on there, I felt like it needed something more. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a few more of the little round pills, and I'm going to sprinkle them to the bottom portion of the card. So again, trying to make it look like those pills are spilling, and if that sentiment is to represent a counter, kind of like they're spilling off the counter. So those are the 10 cards. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know which card was your favorite. It's always fun to hear that, and it's always different from what's my favorite. So I'm going to show you all 10 cards again here in order. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for leaving such amazing comments. You are all so kind and supportive, and it's really amazing. And you guys touch me every day with your sweet words. So thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing for more card videos, including more 10 card videos, whether it's with kits or with collections. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye.